Got Pat Murphy on the line talking Ohio State football as we look at the Buckeyes for 2019 right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So if you love what we do, not necessarily agree with everything that comes out of my mouth, but love what we do, like, comment, share the videos, and please subscribe. Ryan Day, what a position this guy's in. Conventional wisdom would say you need experience to take over an elite program. But we look across the country in recent years and we see Lincoln Riley, who seems to be the best example of what this transition is from legendary coach to offensive-minded genius coordinator guy in Lincoln Riley taking over for Bob Stoops. But we saw it with Dabo Swinney. Now, it took him a few years to get the thing going, but never been a head coach. Kirby Smart at Georgia. Clay Helton with mixed reviews, but never a head coach at this level. And on and on. Now Manny Diaz at Miami. So it seems as though the experience factor of taking over a program of this status, not necessarily something that needs to be done anymore. We see freshman quarterbacks performing well at this level in a different age, and we see first-time head coaches that can continue to win at an elite level.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see how that transition goes at Ohio State. Obviously, you mentioned a ton of the programs around the country, but Ohio State's a bit of a different animal. And Oklahoma is a good comparison. USC is a good comparison, but you've just never had this at a place like Ohio State. And I think a lot of people were surprised. Ryan Day obviously passed the test last year when he took over for all of fall camp and the first 3 games of the season when Urban Meyer was suspended. He has the team, he had the team rolling at that point. I think, he's proven so far that he's, able to go out and get the coaching staff he wants, put the right type of guys around him to help him be successful. The recruiting at Ohio State has not fallen off, which was another question. How would he handle that, having only really done that at Ohio State for the last 2 seasons? Now you have to do it as the head coach. And then I think there's also the kind of the other stuff that comes with being a head coach at Ohio State, the appearances you make, the speaking engagements. As an offensive coordinator, he's focused on football all the time. And he talked about that a little bit this spring, was all the other stuff that maybe you don't think about at first. And then obviously there's the pressure to win. Which I think he's well aware of. He made a comment when we met with him this summer that people keep asking, well, what if you don't win the Big Ten? What if you don't beat Michigan? What if you don't do that? And his response is, well, what if I do? And I think that's kind of the approach you want an Ohio State head coach to have. Urban Meyer felt comfortable turning the program over to him, similar to Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. And I think he's probably as good of a judge of who could be an Ohio State head coach as anyone, having done it for the last 7 years. So the ultimate test is going to be on the field in the fall. But all things considered so far, it looks like Ryan Day is passing the test as a first-time head coach at a program like Ohio State.
To your point, Pat, yes, it's going to be intriguing to see how he responds and how the fan base responds to the first patch of adversity. And when I mean adversity, I don't mean Urban Meyer adversity, 13-1. Oh, why'd you lose that one game? It cost us a shot at a national championship. I'm talking about 9-3 adversity, the ceiling's falling, the sky's falling in, and it can still be a situation where, we've got the right guy. We lost a couple close games. You can't just lose one game every year forever. That there is going to come a time, whether and hopefully for Ryan Day, it's not in his first year. It's after he's built equity, maybe won 2 or 3 Big Ten championships, and in year 4, they drop off to 8-4. But I've got a lot of equity in the bank here, and it's not year 1 where there is thought of. I released a video the other day talking about Ohio State going 10-2, and people were like running crazy, like if Ryan Day did that, then we better get him out of here. So that type of adversity on the field, and then also the adversity of, we'll push the Zach Smith controversy to a whole other category. But, player violence, domestic violence, the issues that Urban Meyer dealt with in the range of 2012, 13, and how he's going to approach and deal with those kind of issues, they're going to come up at one point. And that's the separation, as you point out, between being offensive coordinator and head coach slash CEO.
Right. And, I think something that will help is having a guy like Kevin Wilson, who has been a head coach, has been at plenty of big programs, as his offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, somebody that's had experience dealing with those type of things before. But it will be interesting, and I think it's a very good point on your part, when Ohio State does struggle. I mean, the last 7 years under Urban Meyer are pretty incredible, despite the fact that you only come away with one national championship. They only came away with one national championship under Jim Tressel for 10 years as well. So while there is a very high standard here, there also has to be some understanding that not every coach is Urban Meyer. You had one of the best to ever do it in charge at Ohio State for a while. And, while you don't drop your standard at all for Ryan Day, you certainly have to be understanding that, it's not going to be undefeated every year or, even one loss. And, I certainly think as long as he's continuing to win Big Ten championships fairly regularly, hopefully from Ohio State perspective, beat Michigan and keep that standard where it was, historically, then he's going to be just fine. But of course, there will be people that after one loss, want to see him out the door. That happened to Urban Meyer, and he turned out to do just fine. So I think Ryan Day, like I said, will handle everything well. I think the talent that they have here is evident, and they're continuing to recruit well. So, it seems like the ship is sailing in the right direction. And, that's obviously, like I said, going to be tested in the fall, but they seem to be in a good spot.
Yeah, it's amusing to think that between 2000, we'll take out 12 and 13 because the playoff was instituted in 2014. So we've got 5 years of playoff, and Ohio State has been the one program in the country every year that has been on that dividing line of the playoff, whether they were selected and by some level of controversy, by some people's standards, selected to the playoff,
right?
2014 and 16, or left out of the playoff. They have been the team every year that's been on that 4-5 line. It's quite fascinating. And that's because Urban Meyer has been at that level, right, but has lost the one game that could come into question. And again, when we talk adversity for Urban Meyer, it was always, there was adversity for 1 week. And so for Ryan Day, when he fields a team, whether it's this season, and for his sake, again, I hope it's not this season, I hope it's 3 years down the road, where there's a thought that, this is not the best team in the Big Ten. When Urban Meyer's teams didn't win the Big Ten, everybody still thought they had the best team in the Big Ten. And that's the way it went for 7 years, and it's not going to last forever. Ohio State fans, I'm going to enlighten you to something, that Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. I don't know if that's 2019 or 2029, but it's going to happen again at some point. The program's just too good on the other side, and the law of probabilities are going to take hold at some point. And again, for Ryan Day, I hope that's when he's like 3-0 and then he finally loses.
Yeah, I mean, the run that they've had against Michigan, the run that they've had just in general, between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer is pretty hard to fathom, and it has become the standard. And if it weren't for the Alabamas and then more recently Clemson's of the world, maybe they end up winning more or become that standard in college football. But you're right. At some point, Michigan will have a year where they get Ohio State's number. A lot of people thought it was going to be last year. Obviously, they were favorites coming to Columbus. I think Michigan fans are very much hoping that with Urban Meyer gone, it'll be this year in Ann Arbor. And the talk of Jim Harbaugh not being able to beat Ohio State will be out the door. But, yes, there'll be a year where they lose a few games. They don't win the Big Ten. They lose to Michigan. And I think that's just to be expected. As I said, the standard with Urban Meyer was so high, and that's why he's one of the best to ever coach in college football.
Pat, you used the term unfathomable, and these are the two statistics that I keep going back to when thinking about the Ohio State-Michigan series. One is that if you take out 2011, because Luke Fickell was on the sideline as an interim coach, if you take the last two head coaches at Ohio State, the last time Michigan won this game was 2003.
Yep.
And the other number that comes to mind is that Ohio State's worst record in the Big Ten since 2004 is 7-1. That's the worst record they've had in the Big Ten, excluding, again, the 2011 aberration with the interim coach. Under two head coaches 14 years ago, 15 years ago, they went less than 7-1. Ever since, that's the worst, 7-1.
It's crazy that there are, Ohio State fans out there and fans who have watched Ohio State for some time now that don't remember the time when beating Michigan wasn't almost a foregone conclusion, or that winning the Big Ten every year didn't. It's gone on for so long, and the struggles that Michigan's had have been well documented and whatnot, and that's obviously played a part. But yeah, I mean, for those that lived through the '90s, as an Ohio State fan can attest to, it was not a good time, even if you had a good season but couldn't finish the job against Michigan under John Cooper or whatever it may be. The tables have certainly turned, and as I mentioned, they will probably turn at some point back the other way. We just haven't seen it yet.